All right, so my name is John Brown, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. That means I don't know that there's a certain time limit that goes on to this long-term thing, but I've been clean over a decade. I'm from a small town outside of Charleston, West Virginia, so I'm an Appalachian boy. Um, Grew up in a ethnically diverse neighborhood. It'd be a suburban neighborhood, lower income. And kind of the culture was if you want to fit in and be popular, is that you play sports and you use drugs. And, I had dreams of being an athlete. There are people from our region that have made it to be professionals. Um, got caught up in that lifestyle, kind of got really off track, barely graduated high school. Didn't really pay attention to when I was in school anyway. Um, and that basically continued to progress into what would be considered full blown addiction. That robbed me of everything. I found myself at like 28 years old, homeless, with no family, no friends, and nothing else. Um, I had went to a rehab in Huntington, West Virginia before this recovery thing was huge. So the way recovery looks today is not what it looked like when I got clean. You had to go to like Huntington, West Virginia to go to treatment. Once they released me, I lived in a homeless shelter in Charleston because there was only like one transitional house, and like those people didn't play. It was called the Samaritan Inn. You had to do like interviews for like every 2 months, and it took about a 6-month period to get voted in. Yeah, so recovery, as we know it today, is not what it looked like then. The resources weren't available, and it definitely wasn't as prevalent as it seems to be. So while I was homeless, instead of doing what everybody else was doing in the shelters, I decided to sign up for college. I didn't even know how to use the internet at that time, really, and I was like typing with my fingers on the keyboard, and somehow that worked out. So ended up going to college, getting a degree in education because I wanted to be a school teacher. I found that like I wanted to go back and keep kids from making the same mistake as me. Experienced a lot of flack in that field. Can't tell I'm covered in tattoos. Teachers aren't traditionally tattooed, so that didn't quite work out well. And ended up working for the government with disadvantaged youth that come from more urban neighborhoods like Washington and Philadelphia and stuff. And did that for a while. Now I find myself actually like coming full circle and working in the recovery community. So like I work in Southern Ohio right now for like the largest contractor over there. So I've like seen, both sides of the fight. And like I said, I've had my own personal experience with recovery, and then now I get to like watch people, go through that with even more resources than what were available to me, and even got to deal with like the general public, which seems to be probably like 50-50. We were just talking about that outside, that like it's crazy that even though like it is such a problem today, that like half of the people, even if they have not been affected by addiction, at least half of the people are still somewhat empathetic. And then the other half of the people could probably care less if persons that are addicted even existed. Um, you got any questions, like specifically some information I could give?
Well, I think that goes back to stigma.
Oh, you want to talk about the stigma?
Yeah.
Okay. So the stigma of being an addict, they tell us in 12-step programs, because I'm a person that's also involved in that like that's the last thing to go. And like I said, prior to working where I do today, I've had to always protect my anonymity. So like if I were to have been found out to be a recovering addict as a school teacher, I probably would have been asked to leave and probably blackballed from working in that field. But I just find that like, there's a lot of negative images, I feel like, that seem to pop up in like people's heads that are not addicts or have not been, have had the luxury of being involved with people that are actually in recovery. Now, what we do when we're using is completely different than who we are when we get clean. But like a lot of those images, and I don't know if I'd say it's all discriminatory in nature. I've heard comments like, why don't y'all buy some land out in the middle of nowhere, just put them all out there. If you got a treatment facility, someplace that's trying to help people with this problem, it's like, are you going to put a fence up around it? There's security can you put a tracking device on them? I don't want them walking around in my neighborhood. They travel in packs. That's the best one. Some principal in Ohio said that they travel in packs, like they're wolves or something. So the stigma's there, and it's just it's not any different. Like, I used to teach history, and like the same comments or some of the same like discriminatory comments that they've said about peoples of other ethnicities. It's just the same stuff. Now there's different people to focus on. But the sad thing is like the trends, if you look at numbers, the trends of like people that are having substance use are just, especially here in Appalachia. Like I said, I got a double whammy. I'm Appalachian and I have an addiction. So like we're the most economically depressed region in the country, most undereducated, well, second most behind Mississippi. And then we have like the highest rates of like overdoses here. So it's like, it's a really terrible place to live, considering that stuff. I lost a little bit of track of where I was going with that. So anyway, with the discrimination thing, I get that. Just me personally, I get that from a lot of levels. Like, so just being from like West Virginia, people outside of this place like don't think very highly of it. I find that like when people find out that I'm like a person in recovery, like they're like confused, because recovery has allowed me to become highly educated. It has changed the type of person I am. I'm a very kind person. I genuinely care about people, and I do come off a little standoffish, but I mean, it's like, I live in a region where we historically distrust people. But like I said, I don't understand, what the stigma is, and I think it's just a lack of education. Like people are educated that this is a problem, but I don't think they understand what it is. So I think like, people tend to think it's a problem of willpower, but like if you approach it from a medical standpoint, you got half the people think it's not a disease and half the people believe it is. It's categorized as a disease. But they don't understand how it functions in the brain, and how it like overrides your hierarchy of needs. Instead of food, water, and shelter being like the most important things you need, now it's like drugs and alcohol. So like I don't think people understand that. So they think it's like a moral dilemma, or they think it's like a lack of willpower. And I find that the best thing that like changes the people's opinion is that when they meet people that have like been in recovery long enough to have like really seen a change. I wish I could say the statistics for persons in recovery is good, because that's a blanket term for a lot of things, and I've always said getting clean is the easy part. When we go to we have like conventions and get-togethers, you'll see a lot of people with like 1 to 2 years clean, but after like 5-7 years, the numbers are scarce. So it's like there's no real place to put your finger on what makes somebody stay. And like I said, it's a matter of recovery. It's like when I think of what recovery is, it's like I have internalized a set of principles, these values. I've taken on these values that like they actually address some of the other issues I have. Like persons like myself have done stuff in our past we're ashamed of, we feel guilty about. Been through a lot of trauma, a lot of bad stuff has happened to us, either prior to using, because that's typically why a lot of us use, or during using, that like if it's left unaddressed, if it's left unresolved, it's like it's only a matter of time before it bubbles back to the surface. And it's like one of those things, if you don't face it, you'll do the same thing you did originally, which is go back to using to deal with it. And that's one theory, I guess. The other one is people forget they're addicts after they get clean. A guy told me one time, he said, you're 100% an addict, John, when you're homeless. He said, but when you get a job, you get a car, you get a girlfriend, you go to college, you get all this other stuff, that percentage just keeps dropping. And then you start to forget that you're an addict. And it's a weird place to be a person in recovery because you end up living in two worlds. That was just mentioned by another person. And what it is you have began to function like a normal human being. And so they start to accept you as a normal human being. They don't know that you're any different than them. And that people like us have to remember that even though we now function properly and that we seem like we're normal, we're not exactly normal people. Because the normal person, because we're at this event here, normal people can have a couple drinks of alcohol and be good with that. People like myself, oh, no. We can't stop till like we black out. So there is some inherent difference. It is a mental disease, but for people like us, it definitely affects us mentally, spiritually, and even physically. Like I said, it robbed me of everything that I had, and it leaves a lot of people's bodies wrecked. I'm fortunate I got clean at like 30. I see people that get clean at like 60. And they've got so much damage caused to their body that it's almost like irreversible. And then like I catch myself going, well, how's this person? Why would they want to stay clean? Why would you want to stay clean? It's like you waited like way too long, but it's never too late. As long as people are still alive, because we watch people relapse a lot, and I'm just always glad they come back.
What is, you've alluded to this a couple times, but I'll make it like a one-liner, maybe. What's the one thing you think people should know about addiction?
That's a tough one thing, one line, or just one complete statement about.
A short and sweet statement, something you feel like is the most important thing.
How about something a little profound? So even if you don't think that addiction is real, you can either join the fight that we're in today of like trying to do something about it, or wait till it's one of your kids or grandkids to get involved. So you can either hop in now or wait till you're affected. That's how I really feel. But that's what I usually tell people.
Talk about being here at this event.
Well, this is the first time I think they invited a behavioral health contractor from Ohio. A lot of my friends are involved in planning this stuff, and since I am from West Virginia, I like what the event is about. We're trying to raise some awareness, but also because there is a lack of funding in some areas, like try to raise money that can go towards helping people that are at least trying to combat this disease. I like that some of these people are artists that are local and from Appalachia, and I definitely like that there is a mix of persons in recovery and then what we would call normies, attending the event. I think it's a good thing. I don't think there's enough money. Like I said, I used to be a school teacher, so like if you save one kid, all the money's like worth it. And like the government does try to divert a lot of funding, to this, and there's state like organizations and there's fundraising people out there that fundraise for this, but like as long as we're still dealing with it, there's obviously not enough money to deal with the problem. So anything we can do to raise money, raise awareness, get more people involved, it's a good thing.